Good morning.
What's up, everyone? Happy Monday. It's Dave Espindle, D-Spin, here with the Morning Deuce by hashtagtrending.com. Got a couple things to talk about, and we're going to move from there. The first one is a couple people have asked me for an update on my first two episodes, which were about my Tinder date. Which, if you haven't listened to those, I'm going to spoil it a little bit. But the day after my date, she was driving to Las Vegas to get married, and we haven't talked about it since. So the update is there's not really a lot of update. I have seen a little bit on social media that leads me to believe that things are going well and that she did, in fact, make it to Vegas. So she probably is married now. But I have sent her a couple text messages, and they have not been responded to, including one that was like, "So how did everything go with your wedding?" Which is a strange text message to send, I think, to someone who you're wondering if you're ever going to see again. But they have not been responded to. So it looks like at this point, a relationship that was never, ever going to work is not working at all. We knew it was doomed to end horribly no matter what. So this is probably not a horrible way for it to end, but we wish her all the best luck with her future ex-husband was the phrase that she used. But it doesn't look like we're going to get confirmation on that trip to Vegas, which I kind of want to know. I really hope she does at some point reach out just so I can get the answer to a couple questions, like what was that Vegas wedding like? But as of right now, that is the end, and we never really had to date. I guess if we're playing never have I ever dated a married woman, I mean, I still haven't because it was the night before she got married. So I don't have to drink on that one. So that's the update to Tinder. And then on Friday of last week, I had my Birthdays Are Out of Control podcast. And a lot of people completely agreed with me. Almost everybody did. Even the people who are terrible with their birthdays pretty much agreed to me. But there are so many birthdays going on in my life right now that I had probably 10 people reach out to me and say they thought it was about them. And I think the great philosopher Carly Simon once said, "You're so vain, you probably think this podcast is about you. Don't you? Don't you? Don't you?" That's how I feel. It was about all of you and none of you. But it's more about the people on the other end of the birthday who are obligated to go to these events and or just bail on them and feel bad and are made to feel guilty. So it's not about you guys. It's not about you because there's still clouds in my coffee because you're so vain you thought the podcast was about you. So that's that. Cleared those out of the way. Game of Thrones, absolutely epic episode. I'm not going to do any spoilers, but I told you guys my Sunday night HBO, I mean, we're in the season. Sunday night TV has always been a thing, and Game of Thrones episode 2 of this season did not disappoint. It did follow a little bit of what I was predicting would happen, and I think a lot of the internet was predicting would happen, but things are brewing. Things are a-brewing in Game of Thrones land. The only disappointment really right now is like my only complaint is just not enough nudity. I mean, we talked about last week, 4% drop in people going to porn websites just during the hour of the Game of Thrones premiere. I mean, if you're a showrunner for HBO and Game of Thrones and you want to keep that fan base, like you got to keep the nudity going so you can keep those guys off the internet. So, poor business decision there, really. But other than that, lack of nudity, I mean, the show is great. The show is great. So I have recently gotten into the TV show New Girl, which I know I'm way behind the trend with. And this is something that happened with me with How I Met Your Mother, because I think I didn't hop into that until like season 6 of the 8. And then I started at the beginning and watched them, and they were great. And I saw like 1 or 2 episodes of that, heard a couple people say it was great, and just did not believe them. And it turned out to be a phenomenal show, and I really liked it. And I wish I hopped on board at the beginning. And I feel a little bit similar with New Girl. I owe Ben Salton, my former roommate, a little bit of an apology because he used to watch it all the time and I would give him crap for it because I saw like an episode one time and I would see like half an episode on a plane and just think it was dumb. But I actually gave it a legitimate chance, and I think it's a great sitcom. I think it's well acted, really well shot and staged, and I think the writing is actually really great. So I sort of judged a book by its cover if the book is actually a television show on Netflix, and it's very good. It's very well done, and I feel a little bad. I just finished up season 2. So I'm not even in the current season, but I heard the current season is actually great because my roommate Desmond ran upstairs and told me the season finale was fire. So I can only imagine it continues its upward tick, but I'm very much enjoying it. So in my television life, it's the exact opposite of Game of Thrones in pretty much every single possible way, but it's really well written and it's really good. So, New Girl, I owe you an apology. I'm sorry. And thank you for coming into my life. And yeah, that's what we're thinking about as we head into this Monday. Just cleaning up a couple things from last week and the weekend. And speaking of cleaning up, it's part 2. And part 2 is it's a little bit about organization. I'm a big Ernest Hemingway fan. I think obviously a lot of people are. But my favorite piece by him is a short story published in the early 30s, and it's called A Clean, Well-Lighted Place. You can find it online. It's really phenomenal and very, very short, but really interesting, really well written. And it's a great piece about late night in a cafe in Paris, about these 2 waiters complaining about this old man who's staying up by himself, drinking like alone in this cafe. And one waiter's young and he's got all this going on in his life and he just has no patience for him. And the other waiter, who's a little bit older, just starting to sort of understand maybe that this guy just needs to be alone in a clean, well-lit place. But he wants other people around because it's different than being by yourself. But to be okay in that like clean space where you can be within your own thoughts is something of value because there's so much of everything going on that you need a little bit of a space to slow down. And that sort of popped into my head because I have started Monday and this week off by cleaning my entire room and really getting my space clean and organized. I am a pretty cleanly person. My stuff is clean and I don't lose track of things, but I can gather tons and tons of clutter. And usually my kitchen, but mostly my room is where my clutter gathers. I don't put it in a shared space, which is good roommate quality. Don't let your clutter get to shared spaces. But it's very indicative of what's going on in my life is the cleanliness of my room. If I've been helter-skelter just going through everything without taking enough time to kind of relax and figure things out and stay organized, my room is a mess. And that's kind of how it is right now. It's filled with clutter until I cleaned it up. I still had some of my camping bag from the other week, like clothes were still in the bag and the bag was still in the room. And I just had let so many things get ahead of me that I feel like it's very important if you're going to be productive and be aware of what's going on and really be your best self is to try to keep your space cleaned and organized. Like it's always indicative of me how productive I'm going to be over that day or that week if I take a little bit of time trying to organize and clean my space. And I'm not the cleanest person in the world. I don't have to be. My car goes from clean to very messy and all the time. But when my stuff is clean and organized, that's when I'm doing my best work. It almost feels like an annoying chore because either I want to do whatever I need to do or I want to do something fun that it's rare for me. I don't enjoy cleaning. It's not like a therapeutic thing for me in terms of the actual activity. So I always think there's something else I'd rather do. But once the activity is done, I know that I do better work in that clean, well-lit, organized space. And I think it's important to have a space like that. I recently spent time with a friend who is moving, and she was leaving her apartment. She had like 2 days left there, and I'd never been over. And I was over, and she was talking about how she was so sad she had to move because she loved her apartment because it was in this great location. But what she really loved about it was the way the light came into the house, and like her bedroom was lit up all the time, and her space within her house was organized so that like she was doing things where the light was coming in at different times of the day, and the whole house had this really good energy because of this natural light. And I think that's a really important thing that I hadn't really thought about, that my particular room does not have a lot of great natural light. So I need to keep the space really well organized because it doesn't have the natural vibrancy of the light. I need to make sure it's organized and has its own vibrancy because of how it's arranged and organized within it. And then I need to find other space within my house that has some good light. That maybe that's where I can organize my thoughts and create the best things that I want to create, because it is all about creation. So you need to have a nice blank canvas of organization in your room and your car and your belongings and the things where you try to do your activities. That space, there is a huge value in a clean, well-lighted place. And that made me think of the Ernest Hemingway poem, because he's a really smart dude and he's been saying that for a long time. The theme behind that short story was, we're all, as human beings, a very, very, very small part of a much bigger world in a timeline that goes on far beyond our existence. And the idea of us having such little importance and being such nothingness compared to everything else is overwhelming unless you can organize the little bit that you can control. And sometimes that's just your own personal space. You cannot worry about what you can't control. So you have to control your space and then create the best you can with what you can control. And that's what I took away from that short story, and that's how I decided to start my week, by trying to organize myself a little bit. So maybe that's something you do today on your Monday, whether you go into the office and you get some scheduling done and some emails done and some planning done for your day, or you organize your desk space, or you organize your home or your car. Get yourself a clean, well-lighted place and be the best version of you can be. And that's the end of this Monday. So thanks for being here for the Deuce, and I'll be back tomorrow. Later.